That is what the power of a community does. It's not just that, hey, it's fun and we get to go do stuff. It makes you better. Like, it improves you tangibly as a physical organism when you are part of a community that's that good. Hey everybody, and welcome to a very special episode 50 of the Breaking Muscle podcast, where we bring you real-life examples of success in the health and fitness world. I'm Pete Hitzman, your host for today's show and the managing editor at BreakingMuscle.com. For our 50th episode, we've seized on the opportunity to do something pretty special and bring you a joint episode with another podcast, The Gravel Lot. We've talked a lot on the show over the past several months about the positive effect of fitness in our communities, and this week I get to talk to a couple of guys who have real-world experience in helping to make it happen. Doug McClintock and Jon Wolery are with the Cincinnati Off-Road Alliance, which is the local chapter of the International Mountain Bike Association. CORA has built something pretty special in and around their city, and it's a case study in intentional, effective community development. We compare notes on the different paths our IMBA chapters have taken over the past several years and detail some of the challenges we face together. We cover how communities are built around a unifying struggle and how not everybody has to agree or even get along for the group to be cohesive and productive. We talk about how to harness passion, create buy-in, and create connections to organizations around us to become part of a rising tide. The result is a fun and candid conversation that contains lessons for members of any community that wants to see their tribe grow and succeed. It was also a chance for me to play the opposite role as a guest on their show and talk about some of the successes and failures I've seen as a volunteer and race director for my IMBA chapter. Please leave us your comments and suggestions for this week's show on our Facebook page, and be sure to share this episode with all your friends. If you like what you hear, head over to iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play to subscribe, and don't forget, while you're there, to leave us a rating and a review. If you have ideas for our next 50 episodes, we'd love to hear them. Drop us a line at editorial@breakingmuscle.com.
I'm scared, and I'm worried that, like, all of a sudden I'm going to get a minivan.
And an, like, extra big yard. And
I already have
play set.
Yeah, I have three dogs. I'm going to have a minivan. Some weird stuff's going to happen.
Dude, you're in already.
Oh, no.
You got the dogs. You're here.
Oh. You got a new haircut today?
I did.
Oh, man.
Oh, boy.
So, all right. So why are we here? A special interview this week with Pete Hitzman from Breaking Muscle. Did I pronounce that right?
You sure did, and you're
Yes.
one of 1 in 20 Americans who pronounced that right on the same on the first try.
We were debating it earlier, and I was like, is it Hitzman? Is it Heitzman? So, yes. All right.
Good work.
Let's see. You're from Breaking Muscle, race director for MVMBA. I think you have a real job in there somewhere as well.
Yeah, I wear a whole bunch of hats.
All right.
Race director for MVMBA, I've been doing that for a few years. The managing editor at Breaking Muscle, I've been in that position with Breaking Muscle for about a year and a half, I think. I'm a CrossFit Level 1 coach. I'm a USA Track and Field coach, and I'm a USA Weightlifting Sport Performance coach. So I like to dabble. I like to try a lot of stuff.
Do you sleep?
Actually, a lot. I really love sleeping.
He's tired a lot because he's really busy.
That's how you know he's a good coach.
Absolutely. Well, look,
He does get his eights.
You got to get your
Gotta
eights.
get those eights.
Got to get your eights. So, I mean, that's fine and all, but
we got to put the brakes on it.
Yeah, exactly. Pump the brakes. As always, we need to get to beer first. Pete was awesome enough to bring us a little bit of Dayton flavor.
Yeah, he did his research.
Yeah, he did his research. He knows that we are beer drinkers on this show, and he brought us some Warped Wing Gamma Bomb. IPA. This is, let's see, where are these international beer units?
It is 96.
96?
This is a beer that I am intimidated by.
It looks at you. I mean, it's got a big hand on it. Is it scaring you, John?
It is.
Is it making you frightened?
That many international beer units is not good for John.
You know that also means there's going to be a whole lot of philosophizing because the Play-Doh levels are going to be
7.2 ABV. That is a lot of Play-Dohs in every can.
Look, let's just crack these and
let's
get
do
it
this.
done. All right. Cheers, gentlemen. So we appreciate you bringing it down, and we're really excited for it.
Man, I'm really excited for the show, too. I haven't had the opportunity previously on the Breaking Muscle podcast in 47 episodes to have an in-person interview. So I'm breaking new ground.
You are a managing editor of Breaking Muscle.
Mm-hmm.
You host a podcast, do all this stuff. But you're up in Dayton. You have a very intimate involvement with a lot of the things that have happened up there and all that sort of stuff. Dayton is a kind of interesting landscape for the natural surface trail stuff as well as the paved infrastructure.
Right.
You have a massive paved infrastructure for bikes, which is really fascinating to talk about. But you kind of have a really interesting natural surface plan where your parks community is deeply involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Mamba is the perfect example of that. Is it's created, managed by Metro Parks, correct?
Yeah, so the organization that owns most of the places to have fun in nature in Dayton is Five Rivers Metro Parks. They're a tax levy supported organization. I think they have a dozen or so parks now that we currently have mountain bike trails in one of them, and we can talk about that a little bit later on as well. But we are, from a outdoor recreation perspective, the Dayton region is very, very blessed. We have, you mentioned the paved trail network. There's something like 330 miles of continuous trail that intersect or run through Dayton.
Isn't that like one of the nation's largest volumes of that?
I believe it is the nation's longest interconnected bike trail network. That's continuous.
And
so
for not a very big city, like the footprint isn't that big.
Right, the Dayton metro area isn't huge. I like the size that it is. Of course, I've lived there most of my life, and so cities that are larger or smaller tend to annoy me.
Understood.
I
But
like
it's-
what I like. It sounds like mountain bikers.
But it's very accessible. You know, I mean, I can hop in my car and be anywhere in the metro area in about 20 minutes, or I can hop on my bike and be there in 45 minutes if I'm really humping. So we have a lot of advantages in that respect.
You know, with all that on-street infrastructure, you know, does that provide some of the opportunity to get to some of those natural surface trail locations? Like, I mean, can you leave your house on your bike and get to trails?
Yeah, so I live a mile and a half from the trailhead at Mamba,
That's convenient.
which means that's very easy for me. I go out of my neighborhood, I hang a right, and I'm there. So the natural trail access from paved trails is an underutilized advantage. The bike path that goes from downtown Dayton east out of town terminates at Huffman Dam, which is a mile and a half in the other direction from my house, but still a mile and a half from the trailhead at Mamba. There's a little bit of road, but it's a very quiet road to get there. The bike path that runs out toward Yellow Springs comes to within maybe 4 or 5 miles, probably less than that, of the trailhead at John Bryant. So, and those are country roads, so the traffic's a little faster, but the traffic level isn't that high either. So it's totally rideable, depending on whether or not you want to take a lot of tread off of your mountain bike tires or not.
Sure. Well, I'm going so slow, it doesn't really matter. That's neat. It's neat to have that infrastructure on street as well as kind of from a natural surface trail.
Right, but I think the curious thing with talking about that with me is that we're talking about on-road and paved trail. Mm-hmm. Whereas John Bryan is a fairly decent-sized network.
Yeah.
Mamba is a lot of mileage in a fairly condensed area. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of two locations in the Dayton area. Mm-hmm. So it seems like there's, I don't know if it's a pendulum swing, if it's, well, we've invested all this time and money into paved infrastructure and we're still dipping our toes in the water of the natural surface trail, or it's just, I think from the third party view being down here in Cincinnati, it feels like a completely foreign approach to trail network.
I think that's a really fair point. It would feel very foreign if I wasn't in the middle of it, I think. There's a tendency to view cyclists as a bucket, and that's never really been the case in Dayton. The recreational cyclists that use the multi-use trails, can't really call them bike paths, it's not technically accurate.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
They are not the same as the cyclists who race on the road, which are not always the same as the cyclists who race on mountain bikes. And so there hasn't until very recently been kind of a unified effort to bring all of those disparate voices. Although all of us like to ride bikes, and I have all of those bikes in my garage, there hasn't really been a unified voice to go to places like city management, to go to metro parks, to go to county planning organizations and say, hey, how can we help make this even better than it already is? The metro parks own all of the mountain bikeable land, basically, that there is in the Miami Valley.
You got to work with them then. So that's, I mean,
but they've already taken
owned
the
it.
leap,
right?
of,
Absolutely,
of building, Mamba.
And
so
to their credit, they've been very, very helpful to us, willing to sit down for conversations, willing to bring us into discussions on future projects. Germantown Metro Park is a great example of that. There's bazillions of acres. I don't know what the actual number is.
that's a big piece of land.
We're going to use a very scientific term, bazillions. It's some of the best land in Ohio for any kind of natural outdoor use.
Right.
It has never been legally mountain biked. Put that asterisk on there.
There are a lot of places in Cincinnati that have never been legally mountain biked, but I'm aware of.
Correct. The topology there is sufficient to build an IMBA epic in terms of elevation, in terms of natural resource, in terms of just the raw beauty of the place. It's a really good, and it's Germantown and Twin Creek. There's two parks that actually join together.
Yeah, it's got a river that runs through it, correct, in the middle of it, so it kind of almost divides it, but it's something that can be crossed in many places, I believe.
Yeah, there are...
Grant has suggested a road gap. I don't know how they'll feel about that.
Been hanging out with Robert too much.
Yeah, exactly.
So the 10-year plan for Metro Parks includes exploring the possibility of having mountain bike access there, and we're actively involved in that discussion with them, and have been since they opened the door to us to figure out how that's going to work. Now we have to contend with other user groups, and that's something that I know that you guys have worked very closely with down here.
And there's a really cool kind of softball in that you guys are essentially, we're approaching the exact same conundrum, and we're coming at it from fairly different directions. From my eyes, and Doug, feel free to disagree, but from my eyes, it feels like CORA is doing its best to get to a point where government is taking it seriously, and CORA is working with Tri-State Trails and other user groups to band together to then get to a point where government is taking it seriously to consider awarding areas of land like Mount Airy. Mount Airy is the test bed for the city of Cincinnati parks. And you guys already have the buy-in from the government, so to me, it seems like a much easier sell of getting roadies and mountain bikers together to kind of sing with one voice of, look at all this cool stuff we can build. We already have the biggest hill hurdled, and yet we're sitting down having a conversation about what things are you doing that are working, what things are we doing that are working, how can we learn from each other. And
I don't want to jump on you here, Pete, but one of the things that I think can be missed in this situation is, while you may already have that toehold and a great relationship with a land manager, and that can always be really beneficial to get you at the table, I think the thing that you mentioned, Pete, is you have other user groups who are viewing this land as something they want to participate in, and that battle is a battle you have to fight. When you have a whole user group who is very used to having, as off-road cyclists, very used to having Mamba and John Bryan, the things that they have, and they're happy. Yeah, they want more stuff, but they're happy. They are used to that. The majority of the groundlings are calm. Mm-hmm. Here in Cincinnati, it's kind of the opposite. Everyone is super jazzed up about where are we getting new trail. Good Lord, we need more trail. And while we may not have all the government buy-in, at the same level that you already have had, and obviously Mount Airy has been a massive watershed, and all thanks to Cincinnati Parks for working with us. Without a doubt, we're really excited about that because we know that partnership will work because of the people involved. But you're fighting a battle that we don't have to fight right now to the same extent because you're fighting other user groups, whereas our user group is so loud and vocal and strong because they haven't had this for so long. Complacency can play an odd situation with the biking community for them to not get out and support things that they should be supporting.
Yeah, and the interesting thing to add on that point is that we have 11 trail systems, something like that, within Cincinnati, so you call it 63 miles of trail. And
cool, but Pete can ride out of his house
right
Dayton to a trail.
Right, that's kind of where I'm going with this. It's very interesting what the kind of level of complacency is you guys have essentially probably 19 or 20 miles. If Mamba's 9 and change, and John Ryan is 10 and change.
It's 20.
So yeah, I'll call it 1/3 of the trail.
Yeah,
but And we have quite a bit of great, on-road infrastructure, but it's just funny that there's, well, we need this, or we need this, or we need this, and we're 40 miles apart. And for me, getting from Marymount up to Mamba is not that much of a trip. I mean, it's a shorter trip than going to Versailles.
Mm-hmm. Which is awesome. I love that place. The complacency thing is an interesting question because, as you've noted, we've had this easy buy-in. So before there was Mamba, there was John Bryan, and before John Bryan, there was Caesar Creek. There's no S.
Yeah, I always forget if it's... I know it's not, but I always call it Caesar's Creek because it doesn't make sense to not have a possessive, right?
Yeah.
Like, Caesar has to own the creek.
Whose creek is it?
It's Caesar's.
It's Caesar's Creek.
It's everybody's creek, John.
It's true. Technically, it's everyone in Ohio's creek because it is a state park.
That is true.
But so I say all that to say Metro Parks has managed Mamba. Like, our club helped build it, but Metro Parks has managed and maintained it. They have a full-time guy there. Shout out to Doug. He's amazing.
Oh, that guy's awesome. If
Not you. Not you.
No. I know Doug
Other
Mamba.
Doug.
I know Doug Mamba,
Yeah.
and Doug Mamba is a friend of the show, Doug Mamba. I expect to get email from you very soon. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people. But so he is the trail god there at Mamba, and at John Bryan, there's the Friends of John Bryan group, which has been maintaining both the hiking and the mountain biking trails there since time immemorial, since they were allowed to build trails there.
Which is great. That's
The
great.
downside of that, if you're a volunteer organization, is that there's nothing to mobilize against. All of the mountain bikeable land
It's taken care of.
Right, it's all done.
Right.
Just go out and ride. And so it's been a challenge for us to build a groundswell of popular momentum, to a single point to unify around, if you will. So that's something that is something that we've struggled with as an organization to become as cohesive as CORA has been. The other part of that is that our buy-in with Metro Parks is entirely on the basis of us cheating. We nominated people to our board that also work for Metro Parks, and so we just put our man on the inside and already had a seat at the table there.
Politics.
That's how you play this game, I believe. That's definitely important. So do you think that this kind of Germantown project is something that can be that rallying point for Dayton right now? And honestly, I mean, we have to think about this a little bit larger, and I know that there's definitely been some things we can talk about them that CORA and MVMBA have been working on together. But for our region, I mean, everyone talks about the Dayton-Cincinnati Metroplex. Ultimately, in
One big happy family.
Yeah, in 100 years, when everything from here to Dayton is basically paved, aside from all our natural land that we hopefully have trail in, like, we will be an awesome metroplex, right? So do you think Germantown is kind of that spot that you guys can really build that, coalesce all that?
I think it's definitely got the potential to be. The natural aspects of it just can't be denied. The challenge is going to be convincing the powers that are at Metro Parks and convincing the other user groups, doing that soft diplomacy thing, that we can all live, work, and play on the same piece of land without damaging the land. Because Metro Parks' first priority is conservation, as it should be.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's very easy to say, oh, look at all this land. If we did the same thing we did at Mamba, we could have 100 miles of trail there. Well, you're not going to do the same thing you did at Mamba because Mamba was a rock quarry. And so,
right.
Whatever you did to the land there is almost inconsequential. It's on the side of a highway. The land there wasn't great to begin with. It's all covered up in honeysuckle and nastiness. So putting trail there was an improvement. Not so at Germantown. It's old growth wood. It's there are a whole bunch of different biodiversity issues that you have to contend with there. So it could be, but it's going to be a long road, and it's going to be something that we're going to have to work very hard to keep people excited about.
That's definitely a thing that we've experienced, is how do you take a project that takes 20 years of pushing the rock up the hill to build the momentum and get everyone on the same page, but have everybody understand that when it finally starts rolling downhill, that's great. But we all have to continue to remember that there are things that are going to move at the speed of government, right? The speed of government, which we all know is basically like a snail, and that's okay. And there are reasons for that are perfectly good, which is due diligence and appropriate, bid contracts and all those things that happen in government. But we have to think about those, but I recognize that, and I think those are the same things that we struggle with here, is how do we keep everyone motivated and how do we keep everyone moving in that same direction?
After that first shovel goes in the ground, I think everyone just kind of, rolls their sleeves down and is like, well, project done. Now what, what's the next thing? And that's I feel like when you need to really put your foot on the gas of like, okay, cool, we have what we need to move forward. Now we have to double, triple down on the level of commitment and buy-in from everybody to continue to build this, to then, continue to make this and manage this resource that someone has gifted us to go have a great time on and take care of it and nurture it and help it grow, and then take that success and move somewhere else.
It's like training and racing and everything else. I mean, when you see the race, that's the end of the process.
Sure, yeah.
When you see the new trail opening, that's the end of the process. And there is a process after that process, which is the grind of maintenance and reroutes and doing all the small things that you need to do to keep the thing sustainable so that your grandkids can ride it.
Yeah, sure. That's like taking your bike after the gnarly race that you just, destroyed it, fix your derailleur, clean the thing, replace your chain, do all that stuff. That's the preventative maintenance, the long-term maintenance piece of that for sure.
Mm-hmm. When did the light turn on for you guys that you were actually building a community? Was this something that was just you naturally flowed into, or did you kind of at a meeting one day look at each other and be like, we're growing something important here?
I love this one.
What I would say, I think it was around before I even got on a mountain bike, looking back at the forum. I think you know when you're doing something well when you have a community that's vocal enough to fight and call each other names. And
no, it's legit for sure. I hear you completely. Yes.
And for me, that was what was somebody that came from an auto racing background. You get more into a sport when you're surrounded by people that are just dyed in the wool. They will
jump out of their car and hit you with their helmet.
Ford versus Chevy or John Deere International, whatever the
absolutely,
like Ohio State, Michigan, whatever it is. Those are the things that build community, even though they build contention. But it's because people care so much. So for me, seeing that was like, wow, this must be legitimately a fun sport hobby thing to get into, because look how crazy it's made people.
If it's got people fighting on the internet, they care about it,
right?
Yeah,
and I think that's when I can't imagine that. And granted, this is probably Terry Cly and early Butch president days, but I can't imagine that there was just a point when a light switch flipped and they said, well, shoot, we've got a community. I think it's just.
Well, I think it comes
bootstrap, like step left, right, and you just keep your head down and keep kind of chopping wood until you get to a point and you kind of turn back and realize that, well, shoot, I'm 10 miles from where I was a day ago.
Yeah, and I think it moves in waves, and I think that's what we've seen, right? Like, all this happens in varying waves. As different trends and different things move into the space, they change, right? The first trail was put in by CORA in 96, 97. Like, there was obviously a community here. Like, CORA was founded then, and and Grant's waving his hand. It's like, Grant remembers those days. Like, he was talking before the broadcast about a race he did, a whole race series in Ohio, racing on trails, and CORA was not even a thing at that time, and he was the only dude on disc brakes.
No, it was the takeaway was Grant crushed everybody at Landon.
Because he had disc brakes.
No, Grant won.
Exactly.
He had disc brakes.
That's it.
Period. No,
Grant
period.
won.
Shut it down. That's it. Doesn't matter why.
Grant won.
Grant won.
I apologize, Grant.
Yes.
Grant's going to kill me. I'm going to end up.
He looks real
can.
strong.
I know. He is. He has a strong beard.
There's plenty of places to bury bodies out in the burbs.
That's what I hear. So yes, the community of burying my body out in the burbs exists. But I think it's been a process, right? It comes in waves. Things happen, and things move in and out of the leadership changes, and politicians change, and new trails come, and relationships deteriorate, and relationships grow. All of this happens. But I think I moved from Cincinnati in 2010 and came back 4 years later, and I had rediscovered riding a bike. And I came back super empowered by a group of people I had worked with. And I came back and I said, wow, this community is here. It is really prevalent. Like, I didn't know there was so much trail here. But one of the things we saw, and I think we've all seen, is a fracturing in the community. And one of the big things that I've always been about is, hey, guys, we all like bikes.
Right.
There's enough space for everyone to do all the bike things that they want to do. They need to own their space and be in that space. But what I feel that CORA's job really has been and should be is to say we support bikes. Specifically, we support working on mountain bike trails, building mountain bike trails, because that's the like narrow focus. But that's why you've seen a shift to be part of a larger community, because that's where you build that momentum. I mean, everybody that rides a bike should care about CORA, and CORA should care about everybody that rides a bike, because someday that person may be like, you know what? That dirt looks kind of fun. And if you don't build those facilities and encourage the availability and the like lower the barriers to entry for allow people to jump over that, I think that, for me coming back and seeing a community that, I came from a very small community, all shout outs to my family down at camp, Central Alabama mountain peddlers who have built out a almost 30-mile system in one state park and been very successful. But that's a small community, a very small community, and they've been super successful. And I came back and I went, man, it's unfortunate that all these people can't get along. And no, I mean, come on, people don't get along, but that's okay. It's just everyone needs to understand their lane and be in it and still remember the larger mission of what we're trying to do, which is put people on bikes and let them have fun.
Right. And I think backing away from it is kind of back to a point you made early, was we each view ourselves as I'm a this, you're a that, you're a this, I'm green, you're purple, you're blue.
That's the problem with the world right now in general, but yes.
But externally, outside of this little bubble that we're all in, everybody just views us as bikes. Just bikes. So, if we collectively take that view, whether it's, skin suit roadie, casual mountain biker, or, hybrid mom with the kids behind in the trailer, as we're all just on bikes and we all just want to do bikes, then we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, it's that bucket you talked about, Pete, and I think that's important, so...
Yeah, and we have to remember our mutual friend Andy Williamson sat us down as a club at the Miami Valley Mountain Bike Association a few years ago because we've had a whole bunch of problems with attrition in leadership over the last several years, and it's nobody's fault. Like, a few people did all of the work for a long time, and then they got burned out.
Of course.
That happens in any volunteer organization. Ask anybody who's ever been to a church or a school. That's what happens.
Absolutely.
If you don't have a good plan for succession. And then another guy got a job in Cleveland, and so he had to go, and it was like right in that crucial point in the season where you can't afford to lose anyone because everything is happening. So we kind of struggled and fumbled along for a while, and finally Andy sat us all down in the room and said, look, what do you want to be? What is your message that you're bringing to your region? What are your borders? What are your goals? What is your 10-year plan? Do you guys have a 10-year plan? And we all kind of sat back and went, no, we sure don't. We don't have any kind of plan at all except for like what we're doing next month. So that was very useful for us because that was for us the light bulb moment of what kind of a community do we want to be? And then we had to take another step back and go, what is our place in our community?
That's a really good position to think about.
They're very important questions to be asking constantly. Of even if you think you know where you're at, it's that whole perception is 9/10 of the law thing. Is you can think that you're one thing all day, but if people see you as something different, then that's what you are.
If there's 1 million people in the Dayton Metro, and I'm just spitballing that number, but let's say there's 1 million people in the Dayton Metro, and a couple thousand of them are regular cyclists, that's not a huge voice unless they're all shouting the same message.
Correct.
So that's where you got to get everybody on board and everybody pulling in the same direction. And that's the big challenge I think that faces Dayton in the next 10 years, and it's headed in the right direction. That's why I'm really excited to be a part of it, because it's going someplace, and I'm happy to be part of that movement. But it's a huge, huge rock to get 2,000 people out of 1 million to all speak the same language.
Sure, but I think you guys are making a lot of flow. I mean, I've seen your club move itself significantly in the past couple years, and it's just been really inspiring to see that, because you guys have like really like you're putting right people in the right positions. You guys are all working together. You're all figuring out what your next mission is going to be. You now have new leadership at the top, correct? You guys have a new president.
Yeah, Mr. David Treese has assumed the presidency for the coming year. I think maybe 2. I'm not good at the numbers on that. I just go do my job. I'm the race director. I show up. I hold races. I go home. That's what I do. But Mr. Treese is a dynamic leader. He's a business professional and has been for a long time. He's an active member of the Dayton governmental community, you might say. He moves and shakes in the right kind of circles to know what's going on. He's got his thumb on the pulse of things. And he's hyper intelligent, which doesn't hurt.
He's also really, really fun.
Yes.
And he also is involved in a business that deals with beer.
He is vice president of something or other with Bond-Bright Distributing, purveyors of fine Oscar Blues brewery products, which is a sponsor for us, so that's why I get to get them a shout out. But they're fantastic. They've been a friend of the series for a long time.
I've ridden with Dale.
Oh, yeah.
That dude's a demon on a bike.
Yes.
That dude is a serious demon on a bike. I'll tell you a Dale story later.
I almost feel fangirlish that they know who we are.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way too. I almost saw him bite it on a 16-foot wall, but he saved it. It was impressive. That dude can ride.
Man.
But no, you guys are heading in the right direction, and it's exciting to see you guys do really cool stuff, because that lifts all of us, right? This is our Dayton Cincinnati Metroplex. Like, we work together, and I think something that's really come out this year, which has been really cool for us, is MVMBA working with CORA at Cedar Creek, and Jeff Cyrus, who is a long friend of the show, Jeff Cyrus, who messaged me today talking about some stuff, like a long-term member of CORA who has been here for years, understands the history, and really cares about Mother Caesar. It's really nice to see clubs working together, and I think that's something we're all trying to do in Ohio, and we have a meeting this weekend. I know this will probably not go up this week, but we had a meeting this weekend where we're all coming together to talk about Ohio as a group and being on the same page and where we can collaborate. I think it's nice to see MVMBA thinking about that as not just lip service, but as a way to conduct themselves as an organization.
The most successful organizations I've seen anywhere, and this goes beyond mountain biking and beyond health and fitness, are the organizations that look at the other movers and shakers in their space and figure out how they can help each other become successful. Right? So that applies to CrossFit gyms that help other CrossFit gyms by sending each other members whenever somebody outgrows a certain coaching system or moves to be closer to another place. That happens with volunteer organizations like ours. It happens at the corporate level when they're not buying each other out and merging. If they cooperate, they become much more effective, movers in the space. So we looked at when Andy Williamson sat us all down and said, "What is it that you want to be when you grow up?" We didn't have Germantown on the radar. Well, we had it on the radar, but we didn't see an avenue to actually make any inroads there yet. So we started looking at our borders, and we're like, where can we expand out? Where can we help? And Houston Woods is out in our southwest edge, and Cedar Creek is out in our southeast edge. And we're like, well, those are, I don't want to call them CORA properties because none of us own any of this crap.
None of us own any of this. Yeah, it's true.
But maybe we can help, because at the time, these were two areas that weren't getting enough attention, weren't getting enough love. They were kind of, Caesar, especially at the time, was falling into a little bit of disrepair. Could be a lot better than it was. And it's made huge strides since then. So much so that an absolute garbage rider like me can actually go out there and ride it. So
Caesar still scares me.
Oh, I mean, it scares the bejesus out of me. But if I go out there with other people, then I have to man up.
You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. You're like, well, we've decided to make this ride. I guess I have to do it.
Yeah. I think that whole premise of it, when it first started to shake out, I mean, multiple conversations amongst everybody in CORA of the initial reaction of, I mean, it's putting people's business on the street, but of, oh my God, they're coming into our territory. And you become that like super protective, insular person of who is, Jets, Sharks, they're coming onto my turf and we have to stand our ground and not let them in. And yeah, Grant's snapping his fingers now. But it was a couple conversations of, okay, chill out. What's wrong with more people helping you? If we're consistently having these struggles that every nonprofit has, every volunteer organization has, of hey, come help. To spend an hour, come picking up trash, come clear honeysuckle, come do anything, come help. If somebody's willing to say, hey, we have a whole group of people and we want to help on your trail and we want to help bring it back and we want to help expand it. That's such a great overture. And it was such a, I think we talk about, like we're talking about light bulb moments, but I think for a lot of people within CORA specifically, it was one of those light bulb moments of like, hey, there's a whole lot more that we can do here beyond our quote-unquote borders of working with other people and learning from and seeing the things that you guys do well versus the things that Cincinnati Off-Road Alliance does well. And I think that can then move into combo, and it can move into Kentucky and Tennessee, and suddenly you're working with all these other organizations, and like you're saying, sitting down with everyone in Ohio. You don't all have to be doing the same thing, but if you're aware of what everyone's working on, everyone can spitball ideas, everybody can bring something new to the table, everybody can bring, hey, this is what's working for us. Trail icons. Perfect example. When we launched it, everybody hated it because it was new and it was different.
The entire core organization had a basic fit.
Yes.
That's okay. Everyone loves them now.
Now people refer to as Devou's Red. It's not Devou's Closed.
No, it's red.
It's red. So it becomes just part of lexicon when you get over the initial hurdle of...
So, in an interesting piece that came out of the conversations of that, like with Jeff Cyrus, who's been there forever, Jeff's like, yeah, like 75% of my crew that comes to Caesars is from Dayton.
Right.
Like,
hello.
Cool. And that was one of the first things he said to me, and I was like, well, that seems like this needs to be a conversation we're having rather than a territorial dispute like the dogs peeing on mailboxes.
That's a beautiful segue.
We might get back to
you
that.
had for dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, that leads to another interesting point, which is that communities that are less successful look at communities that are measurably more successful and want to become them. And that's not the right answer, because you may not have the same assets that they have. We don't have 11 trail systems in Dayton.
Right. Sure.
We don't have 10 times the population, so we have to draw from different strengths. We have to find different ways to move forward. And so there was a time when we were going through some leadership attrition struggles, right, where people were like, well, I'm just going to change my membership to CORA because they're doing cool things. I'm like,
that makes no sense.
I think it totally makes sense, because people gravitate towards success. People want to have what you're selling. But the right answer, and this is where we brought people back in, is say, if you want what they have, then figure out how to make it happen here. And that's where we're starting to make some forward progress. And when you direct someone who is so passionate that they will drive 90 minutes to a mountain bike trail instead of going to the one that's 25 minutes from their house, you take that passion and you redirect it inward toward the inside of your organization. That's a powerful force.
Oh, dude, I absolutely agree. I mean, that is the hardest thing to do, but it is absolutely the thing you should do. Mm-hmm. It is tough to make happen, but it's great.
And it doesn't always work.
Yeah, well, it's because it's such a multi-pronged approach. It's not just, I think, CORA, MBA. I think everybody goes through this. I think Combo goes through it, where you get really good at managing trail. You get really good at building trail. You get really good at the
throwing races.
The kind of blue collar end, the boots on the ground work of it, and you just turn your back to the marketing pieces, the social media, the actual communication and the PR behind what your organization is doing. And I think back to charity runs, charity rides that I've done, Susan G. Komen, where the majority of the fundraising they do goes straight back into marketing the promotion of the events to keep the events going, because at some point they've decided that this is their model that they're going to work with. And I think that's been a great kind of watershed for CORA. I don't say us, because I mean, I'm not a board member.
But we've said this before. How many times, John? You're a member of CORA.
Correct.
You are CORA.
Correct. But
you can speak for us.
But looking at CORA specifically, it's, having an updated website, having stickers that go into every shop, that if you want stickers, if you go to Fleet Feet Sports right now and buy a pair of trail shoes, they're going to give you the rules of the trail brochure, flyer from CORA. Having sales from Trek bikes locally go back into the IMBA Trail Fund. All of the little things that you can do to kind of show people where you're at and communicate your message, they all end up working together and supporting that end goal of, I want to build trail, I want to build trail, I want to build trail. Cool. And granted, I might have a little bit of an inside track on that, because that portion of it is what I do on a daily basis. But there's tons of those sorts of people in Cincinnati, in Dayton, that if you just stick to we build, we manage trail, you're never going to ascend to that next level, and you're never going to convince that person that East Fork isn't worth a 90-minute drive.
Well, and the thing you're talking around right there is something that is another common element of success for coaches or community organizations anywhere, or gyms or what have you. You're not in the business of building trails. You might think you are, but you're not. You're not in the business of teaching people how to squat if you're a coach. You're not in that business. You're not even actually...
I could use that help, actually.
We can talk about that after the show.
Good.
You're in the business of creating and maintaining relationships.
Yes.
And you do that with marketing. You do that with podcasts. You do that by walking into the shop with the sticker. It's not the sticker. It's the relationship.
Right.
You create this little link of a relationship with that business owner, and then they pass on that link of the relationship with every sticker that they hand out. It's that common impression of the world that you're imparting on everyone. That is the actual business that you're in.
That sticker embodies what the goal means. And I think within the CORA board, and I'm starting to see it within MVMBA's board, of once you get a group of people that buy into that same commonality, the momentum that you can build really, really quick.
It's stupid.
Is bonkers.
It's crazy.
It's insane. And I want to use that as a springboard to something else, that building that community and maintaining that relationship mindedness. I'm a writer. I can use that.
That's a good one. I'm with it.
Is something that starts with leadership. My first exposure to Doug was coming down to your guys' annual membership meeting and having my mind blown by the level of production that you guys put into engaging your membership at that meeting.
This year, they're not going to be lasers.
Fireworks.
I want lasers, but I'm working on it.
Can we get a fog machine?
Yeah, we had to shift that money to Mount Airy. There are no lasers this year.
Budgetary constraints.
Yeah,
but that was what I wondered about, if you had that light bulb moment, because at some point you guys stopped sending out a newsletter to the members and you started saying, come to this brewery, we're going to talk about everything we've done in the past year. And is that something that you started, or did it start before you?
I think there's always been an opportunity for that. One of the challenges I had is I was new home, right? And I was like, oh, what's the clickety clack? What's the mountain bike group here?
Right.
It's CORA. And I was like, oh, they're looking for board members? I was like, sounds like I want to sign up. And then they barely researched me and got in trouble. And ended up with me, who has way more excitement than I have deliverable goods. And I just started shouting a bunch. And then this kind of random crap started happening. But I've got big dreams for what can happen here, and so I see all the people that are surrounding what we do and are so passionate about this, that you can't not take their talents and put the show on the road. I can talk to people, that's fine, but all the people that make everything happen here are really what make things happen. And I just want to be able to spend some time to take all the people who participate in it and bring them in and say, look, you're in our arms, you're part of us, you are part of this. Don't ever forget that. And sometimes you don't have the opportunity to remember what's going on or know what's going on or feel like you're in touch with all the millions of projects or all the 11 trails we have and all that sort of stuff. So, working with our board to figure out how we touch more people more regularly was a really big thing that we started thinking about. As a group, what are we missing? How are we not connecting? How are people feeling like they're out of touch? And thinking of CORA as CORA. they just work on the trails. No, like...
Or they just tell us what to think, or...
Yeah. We're not a dictatorial organization. I mean, we're not going to, like, grab some, like, bikes and do a big parade or anything. Like, this is not how we're operating.
Wait, we're not?
No, we're not. We can do a bike parade, but, like, we don't need to show our expensive bikes to people. Yeah, but flash parade. But, like, we are a group that wants to see everyone involved, and we had to, like, reconnect with and the board really sat down and said, how do we figure out how we reconnect with our community? Who are the people who are using our trails? Why do they not feel a connection to us, and how do we reestablish that? And it was really a conversation that happened throughout all our board, and some of our members who are more engaged, our trail stewards, those folks, and said, look, like, we have all these people to come out and do this stuff. Why are we not touching them? How are we not reaching them? We realized guess what we all do? We go to the trailhead, we hang out in the gravel lot, and we talk. And that's where we build relationships.
Was that a name drop?
It was.
Did you just? Drop. That's solid.
I got them all day. But, like, that's it. Like, where do you build those relationships? You build them at the trailhead. You build them when you end up on the tail end of somebody's group ride and you're huffing it out. Like, that's how it is. Like, that's how you build relationships. It's not through a newsletter. It's through that personal contact, and we had to reach that.
And to just build on that a little bit, I mean, the name drop is very pro for sure. But
thanks,
just
man.
Just to build on that, after last year's annual meeting, I helped build the deck to get ready. I helped kind of craft some of the message and things like that, just from kind of what needed to be said, how it needed to be said. I knew if Doug just got up in front of people and talked, they would feel his energy for this and they would get excited by it. But the minute that meeting was done and we kind of walked over to the bar side of the room, it dawned on me that, look, this worked. So how do we take it to the next level? And granted, that was almost a year ago, and it took us 9 months to get there. But finally, in December, it was, how can we do this every week? And this is where truly the Gravel Lot was born. And it was born because of all of my best conversations, whether they've been before, after road rides, mountain bike rides, shop rides, whatever it is, it's always in the parking lot when you're talking trash to each other before you ride or making fun of somebody after you ride. It's those connections that really, truly build the community. And to Doug's point, you can't send out a monthly mailer or an email, because at that point you're just talking to somebody. You're talking at them. You're not talking with them. And having this ability to continuously talk, having the annual meeting where when Doug was finished, you got bombarded like a rock star by 15 people asking you questions, but every single trail steward that went up and gave their annual report had the same thing. When they were done talking, everybody that had either ridden that trail or engaged with that trail talked to that specific steward and was jacked about their excitement because they felt it. I'm a graphic designer by trade. I can't do that in a poster or a direct mailer or an email or anything like that. I've been doing it a while and feel like I'm pretty good at it, but I can tell
You're good.
I can tell you that it's just not possible to deliver annual meeting level, to deliver an hour's worth of podcast content every week in some sort of just written material. It's just not possible. So I think it's that stair-step approach of you have the conversation, and I sat on some of those board meetings when I was trying to figure out kind of how I could potentially help. And I saw the energy, I saw the dynamic nature of everybody getting very, very motivated and arguing with each other about, this is my idea, this is your idea, this is why I think this idea is better than that one, or this could combine with that. And it's like, oh, geez, like, everybody needs to see this, because you guys have these conversations, and they've been happening for 15 years.
Oh, absolutely. Well before my time.
But those conversations then turned into, here's a direct mail, or here's a Facebook post, or here's a website. It doesn't have any of that fire.
It's not dynamic.
That just intangible thing that, like, I want to make this not safe for work, but that that very like R-rated energy, that very carnal thing that gets people so excited when they see a great performance or they see somebody talking about something that touches them, or you hear a great poem or whatever. It's that thing that takes the experience to the next level.
And this is a phenomenon that we witness all the time in the fitness industry too, right? There is no group of fighting cats that is worse than a bunch of different fitness coaches from different methods sitting on the internet.
I can only imagine.
Keyboard warrioring at each other. So as a managing editor of a website like Breaking Muscle, we have people writing for us from all different spaces.
Sure,
we have
right.
yoga instructors, we have kettlebell people, we have Olympic weightlifters, we have runners, we have triathletes, we have everybody. We like to call ourselves fitness agnostics.
That's a good thing. I like that.
The other side of that very hippie-sounding term is that people love to come to us to argue at the other side. Right. What's funny is that if you put all these people in a room, they're not going to do it. If you take somebody to an Olympic weightlifting competition, they're going to think weightlifting is the coolest freaking thing on the planet. Because the first time you see somebody put 350 pounds over their head, it's cool. Like, I don't care if you can do it or identify at all. Like, it's cool to see.
No, I can't do the giant slalom. Yeah, go Lindsey Vonn. Like,
right.
I think it's cool. I get tears in my eyes if you ascend to the podium at the Olympics. I'm like, oh, Coach Lindsey Vonn, you are the best.
So, and we can talk for hours about the hive of scum and villainy that is the International Olympic Committee.
Well, we can, for sure.
But one thing they do really, really well is tell those stories. NBC Olympics does the most amazing job at telling these, like, downtrodden underdog stories of, like,
when it's over, you're like, oh, I hope they win everything. I
think figure skating personally is the dumbest thing that has ever been devised by man as a competitive endeavor. I think it's beautiful. I think it takes a lot of talent, and you're definitely an athlete if you do it. Not a sport. However, the stories that they tell about those figure skaters are amazing, and that creates that personal connection. So in the fitness space, to rewind my tape a little
Shout
bit.
out to I, Tonya, by the way. Great movie. Great movie. Go see it.
So in the fitness space, one of the things that we try to do at Breaking Muscle is really make it so that people can understand and draw from each other's strengths. And that's the same thing you have to do in a community organization or as a gym or as a small business, is find ways to draw from each other's strengths and stop playing this, oh, that's my trail system game. Right. Or this is, we built this trail for advanced mountain bikers. No, you didn't. But you know, you guys are 0.1% of a 0.01%. So how important are you really?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has to participate in the same space, and we all have to have, like, the ability to continue to grow what we do. And I think, like, one of the things you guys have up in Dayton at MVMBA and John Bryan is you have some progression. You know, you have a trail systems that have the ability for beginners to actually go out and participate. And, like, we know here in Cincinnati, that's a challenge within CORA's trail system setup, right? If you look at the bell curve, I've got I have my graph because I have my right notebook with me, and I can show it to you guys. So I carry this graph with me all the time, and there's one side on the vertical side, there's the amount of trail we have, and on the horizontal side, there is the difficulty of the trail from easy to hard. And if you look at it, it's a straight bell curve. Like, it is literally.
Doug drew a speed bump.
It's a hump, and almost all of our trails.
We'll put this in the show notes.
Oh my God, a lovely CORA hump. That's what we're going to call it from now on, the lovely CORA hump. The challenge is all the trail is in the middle. And when you build a system like that and you only have stuff in the middle, guess what happens? You alienate the people at the top. Sure, that's 25 guys or gals in the Cincinnati area. And we all know who they are. They're loud. They get alienated because they can't ride here. Guess what? They also generally have the means to ride other places that can challenge them. However, if you don't build the short end of it, which is the easy end, you don't get kids involved. And I guarantee you put any 12-year-old on a mountain bike, in 5 years, that kid's already at the expert level, and he's begging and wanting to build that expert trail. And now guess what you've done? You've got 25 more kids who are riding that level, as well as anyone who's ascended from the intermediate level. You have to build progression. And I love that MVMBA kind of has that happening as a gateway in their trail system. And that's really something to be proud of.
I'm really happy about it, and I can't take any credit for it at all. But one of the things that's really cool is that with our race series, with the 2 trail systems we have 5-year-olds who have only been on a bike for a week.
Exceptional.
And we have 40-year-olds who are annihilating everyone in the expert class racing on the same trails. Because there is something there for everybody. Right. And my job as the race director is to make sure they don't hit each other, which is sometimes a challenge.
Can't those expert guys just bunny hop those little kids?
We've never lost anyone. Not for lack of trying, but it is a really cool thing, and it's a really cool thing for everybody because the experts get to be challenged and the kids get to stand on the same podium that the experts are on. And you know what kind of an impression that creates? None of that existed for me when I was a kid in any realm. There was never a point where I was competing on the same field as adults.
Right.
When you have that, and this is something that I think is going to be a big phenomenon in the United States in probably the next 20 to 30 years, is I think organized team sports are going to continue to follow their curve downward that they've been following. But individual sports that you can do for the rest of your life, like mountain biking, are going to continue to ascend because they can be family sports. They can be something where you don't have to worry about what to do with the kids. You just bring them.
Right.
But to your point, you have to have the trails to do it with. Yes. And that means you have to have at least part of your trail system be beginner friendly. They're doing a great job with that in Columbus too.
Yeah, without a doubt. Combo's really figured that out. And I think that's something we are certainly focused on here at CORA, but it's just a matter of cool, now we got to find the spaces to do it. And that's what we're making happen.
And the drawback to that whole argument is there's rarely anyone advocating for those beginner level trails because they don't know that they could be into mountain biking. They don't know it exists yet.
Right.
Exactly.
And so whereas as you get up that core hump, when you get into the more expert level, they've been there, done that. They've ridden all the trails. They've you can clear the Tree of Love at East Fork. You can take a KOM on the descent at Full Monty or whatever. You're already in. You already get it. You already are indoctrinated into this. You're not going anywhere. It's those people who don't really have an advocate that need the most kind of getting up to speed on it. And we specifically have Terrell Park, which is great. And every time I go there, it's always that perfect coalescence of you see somebody running, you see somebody walking, you see a dad with his kid on a Strider bike, and then there's me on a cross bike. And it's this is perfect. We need 40 more miles of this.
That is seriously one of my favorite times to ride. I love to go ride there. And I don't know if you've been there, Pete, but it's a 2-mile loop in basically floodplain. It's pretty much rideable all year.
Mostly sandy.
Mostly sandy, unless the Little Miami River's up and then you need a canoe.
Reclaims it.
But it becomes a different trail every year. But the great piece of that is I love nothing more when I'm out there just ripping laps, working on flat corners, doing whatever, coming around the corner, and it's a dad or a mom and 2 kids. And some of the best interactions I've ever had is because of those. And I'll stop and I'll ride, back of the bus, I'll ride sag, and all I'm doing is shouting to the kids, giving them encouragement. It is the most wonderful, life-affirming, reminds me of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because guess what? Somebody put me on a bike at one time in my life, and they made that experience good. And that's what we have to do to continue to grow this.
Well, I can tell you that happened for me at a very late age. If John Bryan State Park wasn't a beginner trail system, I wouldn't be a mountain biker.
There's the testimonial, folks, literally right there.
Because I'm not very good, technically. I'm bullheaded, and I'll keep trying.
High five.
But I would have... And what's funny is John Bryan is also the only place I've actually hurt myself where I crashed, but that's a whole separate story.
It's always your first.
Simple wet rock. But when I was brand new, I was riding there just trying to figure out my way on this $100 Craigslist special that was about 2 sizes too big for me. And I crashed my brains out because I looked over my shoulder because there was somebody behind me. That somebody was the legend, Gary Blair, who you probably have seen at the 6 Hour before.
I am familiar with Gary Blair.
I'm going to do a quick side story about Gary Blair. He raced the 6 Hour at John Bryan, which is an easy trail system, but it's very rooty. It's flat, but it's rooty. He raced it on a cross bike. This had been probably 3 years ago. And he came in from his last lap with no tire on the back wheel. That's when we started calling him the legend.
I watched Butch Farrell do that at Houston Woods in the first Houston Woods 6-hour race. He was on pace to finish under 6 hours, but somewhere in the last lap flatted and came around the last corner, around the last tree, onto the gravel stretch with the rear tire wrapped up around the rear cassette, pedaling with a big smile on his face, riding on the rim.
Gary Blair, Butch Farrell, we need to get you in a room. You all can tell each other stories.
We'll just record
but I tell that side story to say I'm not that hard. Like, I am not that cool or talented or hardcore. Like, people think I'm hardcore. I'm a giant wuss on a bicycle. And I'm unabashedly will say that. I picked out my big race, or my second big race for this year is the Lumberjack 100 up in Michigan, and I picked it because it's the least technical 100-mile mountain bike race in the country.
Sweet, I should join you.
Just go out there and grind and try not to get carried away by the mosquitoes that are the size of your head.
It is Michigan.
It is Michigan, and it's kind of swampy, but it's a beautiful, beautiful place. But if John Bryan wasn't there, if I hadn't had that day where Gary Blair checked on me to make sure I hadn't killed myself, I wouldn't be a mountain biker. And then what would I be, right? Because mountain biking was my gateway drug. Mountain biking was the thing that got me to quit smoking. It got me to lose 40 pounds. It got me to get into all of these other fitness modalities that I now coach. So look at that ripple effect. And I don't use myself as an example very often because it seems self-serving. But if you look at that ripple effect and you apply it to anybody else, you apply it to the 5-year-old kid who's standing at the podium because there's a youth class. If you apply it to Jane down the street who's got 3 kids that finally made it into college and she wants to do something with her life and she saw this mountain bike thing on the internet, there's got to be a place for them to go.
Right.
I absolutely agree, and I think that's something we have to continue to build in, and that's important. And I mean, there's a million movements for it. I mean, one of them right now is the whole junior women's category in cyclocross. There's no UCI representation for that right now. So you have junior men, U23 women, U23 men, elite men and women, but
and
junior
the U23 women is a recent phenomenon as well.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Why are we not racing all the same classes across all the genders? This is absolutely insane. This is 2018. This should not even be a consideration. Men and women should get paid the same. There should not be any challenges there. We need to figure this out as a community because guess what? Women are more than 50% of the population. And guess what? They ride bikes, and they should be part of our conversation. I'm excited because I'm getting really stoked up about this because I've got something in the bag for the podcast that I'm really, really excited about. We'll touch on all that at some other point. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and I think briefly as we kind of flow towards the end here, so like the whole racing scene. So you're the race director for MVMBA, and so you are the one who is responsible for making your race calendar and working in the crazy framework that is the racing calendar in Ohio.
Ohio, Midwest. I mean, you factor in NUE.
That's one of the things. And I learned this when I first moved to the Midwest in the 90s and got involved in the electronic music scene. You would be like, cool, it's the weekend. Are we going to St. Louis or Chicago or Nashville? Because every place is like 3 to 4 hours from every other place. So the racing scene here is real challenging to like schedule and deal with. Like how have you positioned that within MVMBA? Because I know that's a big fundraising piece for MVMBA.
First, I have to say that I was very lucky. I inherited a series that was already very successful from the people who were originally the trail builders at John Bryan, who were also running MVMBA back in the forum days, back in the dark pre-IMBA days, as it were.
Well, we must always give shout-outs and say, long live the forum.
Yes. Long live the forum. Speaking of hives of scum and villainy.
No.
There was a lot of passion there, and that passion is what we're still riding the wave of that today.
Absolutely.
And we can't not acknowledge that. But when that group of people decided to step aside and let the club become its next evolution, they just needed somebody to cover the bases. And so I had no previous experience, and so I raised my hand, as you do.
That happens.
I had raced for a couple of years. I think won the sport class one year, and that meant I needed to move up to expert, and that was terrifying. So I decided to retire from racing and
best thing to do
and become the director.
Yes, best thing to do is become the promoter.
But working within that highly competitive space, we talked before we came on air about the highly competitive space of recreational dollars and recreational athletic dollars. And you have to look at what everybody else is doing and figure out how you're going to differentiate, for one. And one of the decisions that we came to, mostly consciously, was to be the family-friendliest race series. So we have food at a lot of our events. We have live music at our events. We have things for the kids to do who aren't racing. We have things for families to do. We have a yoga chick that comes and stretches people out. We have, we try to add more to the event to make it more of a community thing than just a race series. There are already series for the hardcore racers who are going to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and drive 3 hours to go pound their brains out for 60 minutes and then drive home.
Hashtag Mohican.
Like the OMBC series is amazing. The amount of races that they put on every year and the level of competition that they bring and the fact that they dive into West Virginia, which is like pretty crazy. It's a really great series. And
absolutely.
I should back up and say people who are listening to this podcast on the Breaking Muscle feed who don't think mountain biking when they think Ohio, dude, come try us. Like, we got some real legit stuff here.
It is legit. I've raced some of them, and I do not like them. I will not be doing them this year.
If you have any question, go to Great Seal. End of story.
Yeah, that'll do you.
Go to Great Seal. Go to Mohican. Go. Versailles ain't that far. It's not Ohio, but it's still the Midwest.
Yep.
Like,
right.
Brown County, we have so much amazing mountain biking, and I've mountain biked in probably 12 states now, and I still love the trails here as much or more than any other place because they're so diverse. There's such a diversity of opportunities. Anyway, we were talking about race series organization.
We can get on like 100 side tangents.
He self-corrects himself. It's awesome.
It goes back to the thing we were talking about earlier, that we're all on the same team. And so we try really hard to balance our needs as an organization to have our race series be successful enough to be an effective fundraiser, while also nurturing our community, creating those personal connections, making it a place where people don't have to leave their families but can bring their families along. And also help other race series like OMBC, like the NUE races, like the races that have happened in Cincinnati, the Tri-State 6-Hour Series, helping them all be successful too. And that was a big player this year in us moving our own 6-hour event to July, was to deconflict with all of the races that are happening in that August, September timeframe, because there's something every weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a problem in our area, right? Like, we have weather constraints that cause us massive challenges, right? Like, 2 years ago, you didn't get to ride a mountain bike on a trail in the Dayton, Cincinnati area until
July?
Yeah, maybe late June, early July. It was like, I mean, it was monsoon season all of May and June. It was brutal.
Yeah, I remember that year.
All of a sudden, guess what? It's July. Everybody's got a race for 3 months, and then all of a sudden, and as we all know, and because John and I talk about it enough on the podcast, is cyclocross is huge in the Ohio Valley. September comes.
Yeah, once you hit Labor Day.
Yeah, once you hit Labor Day, it's cyclocross season.
Cross season is like the NHL season. It just goes and goes and goes. There are so many races.
And I like that because cross should be in the Winter Olympics. And I believe this fully.
100%.
I believe this fully, and there is a movement, and it should be alive. And friends of the show, Crosshairs Radio, talked about it on the podcast that they have, and they said, we're all behind this now. There's a movement.
Can we get rid of ribbon dancing?
Yes, that will happen too. Man. But the challenge is you have these intersecting groups, right? You've got so many groups that are so passionate about doing races and making this happen, and everybody's trying to do it in a 4-month window max.
When you have, most of the time, you have Saturday's your sweet day, especially for endurance races.
Sure. Yeah, Saturday, because Sunday's a tough day to do it on the back end and still get recover and get back to work.
Yeah, exactly.
And this problem exists everywhere. And I thought of a really good example that kind of embodies this. Mark Legg, who is the Mr. Katie Compton, friend of the show.
Mark Legg Compton.
Yeah, Mark Legg Compton. Yes, he definitely has to hyphen the end. Who is Katie Compton, 14-time national champion, second place at Worlds this year. Her husband, he posted when the new UCI series came out. They posted yesterday, hey, here's the UCI list. And his immediate comment, well, this sucks for us. You know why? DVV, which is the DVV series over in Europe that she won this year, has a race the day after CX Nats here in America.
Which that series by itself paid for most of her racing season.
Exactly. So here is a professional racer who makes her life by racing bikes, who now has a conflict because of national championships to potentially get a win at the series that has paid her entire year. Like, this is a problem, not just in our region, and we need to figure out a better way to communicate about all this stuff. And I think there's some, like, we're not going to fix the UCI. Like, that's a discussion for way better people than us. But what's cool is, like, Ohio is working together right now to start talking about this. And we started 2 years ago thinking about this. Hey, can we put schedules up? Can we all talk about this? How do we work together?
Right.
Like, when professionals are going to have this problem, you're going to have it on a micro level as well down in communities.
Yeah, and it's the exact same conversation we're having about Caesar's River.
Caesar's River. There's a song. I'm going to write a song for
Yes.
it. I can sing it on the podcast.
To the tune of Old Man River?
Yes, anytime I can sing on the podcast, I'm very
We
excited.
told you it was only when the Bengals win the Super Bowl,
I already sang the Fly Eagles Fly song once.
which is never.
More's coming.
But it's very similar to that because the initial response is, well, and we talked about this before we came on, is get your schedule out first. That was a couple years ago. And the arms race is a perfect lead into this. It was who can get on the schedule first, because now I was here first. Sooner property. This is mine. Squatters' rights. You can't have this weekend, and then everyone else has to just find and deal with what's left of the table scraps. And it's nice to finally start to acknowledge that, okay, one, limited resources. Tri-State
Correct.
6 Hours hitting this head on right now of limited resources, and you hit the point perfectly. There's only so many racers that are going to go race, and there's only so many racers that are going to go want to do a 6-hour mountain bike race or a 1-hour mountain bike race or whatever that specificity of a niche is. Mm-hmm. So there's only so many of those that you're going to have. So fighting amongst each other is asinine, but we've had it. I think we need to all put it to the side, get rid of it, and acknowledge that everybody's races are valid. Everybody wants the same things. Everybody wants 100 racers in every category for their event, and we have that many racers in the area. I think it's just a matter
way
of
more than that, even for sure.
Everybody for every category. There's no reason that a Tri-State 6-hour race shouldn't have 300 people line up at the starting line. There's no reason that the JV 6-hour shouldn't have 300 people line up at the starting line every year. Mm-hmm. The events are that good, and we have that many people. If everybody can just coalesce and function on the same level and acknowledge that just because you get success doesn't mean I can't have success, I think that is a step in the right direction. And you guys doing the Facebook post of, hey, what do you think? Should we move it out of September and move it back to July? And overwhelmingly, it was like 75% or something like that, crazy, said, yeah, move it to July so I can come.
Which I gotta say I was completely shocked by. I expected the exact opposite, because people tend to be very resistant to change, and the John Bryan 6-hour has been in September for 10 years or something. Right. So I was very surprised that it went over as well as it did, and I hope that it's not 107 degrees. We might make it a night race.
I'm good. That was sweet. Oh my God, we don't have any night races around here, and I've been to a night race, and night races are sweet.
Talk about a low turnout.
Nah, you do like a twilight race and be like, cool, turn your lights on. Pick up your lights and lap through the pits. It's going to be good. That's a really interesting thing to see. But
I think it's a great conversation to have, to continue to have, to bring it up, to bring it to light. Sunset's the best disinfectant kind of approach of cool, let's acknowledge that race promoters have been each other's throats for decades.
And they always will be, no matter where you go.
Correct.
But ultimately, I think the one thing that, this is Midwestern hospitality. And I always talk that Midwestern hospitality is way better than Southern hospitality, because Midwestern hospitality leaves it all on the table. And they're like, I like you or I don't like you, and that's how this is. And guess what? It allows you to sort your differences out. Mm-hmm. And we need to have a little Midwestern hospitality and get everybody to the table and say, hey, cool, where are we having problems and how can we work together so that everybody's boat rises? Because that's what we've done here in Cincinnati as an organization. I know that's what you guys are doing in Dayton as MVMBA. This is how we're working together. This is how all of Ohio as a all the mountain bikers at least are all at least starting to get together, and everybody's starting to say, hey, we're all on the same page. Let's all work.
It's all community building. I mean, it's just, we keep coming back to this, and I like that's become the central theme of this conversation is how do you build this community? We're in the relationships business. And so each individual race series needs to look internally and figure out what their strengths are and what their purpose is as a race series. And ours, I've already kind of talked about for MVMBA, but maybe the 6 hour has a slightly different purpose, and maybe OMBC has their slightly different purpose. And that's how you make sure that you get everybody who wants to race in any capacity out there racing.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Instead of excluding a whole bunch of people who would like to race, but man, I'm just not down for 6 hours, or I'm not down to race at Mohican, or whatever their barrier to entry is.
Yeah, barrier to entry is always a change. Yeah. Anything else you want to touch on?
I think you guys just released your schedule of events for this year.
We did just release our schedule of events for this year. We're trying some new things besides moving the 6 hour to July. We're also trying a Wednesday, Friday pattern for our Fast Lap series, which traditionally has been all Wednesday nights. The last race of each half of the series. So we have our spring half, which is the first 3 weeks in June, is going to be Wednesday, and the Friday is going to be a cookout. So that's where you bring the family,
dope.
hang
That's
out.
awesome.
We're going to work some other angles of trying to make it family friendly and get permits to have things at the different places. It's all a little bit early now, and we've already had pushback. Why Friday night? Friday night's family night. I'm like, well, so bring them along.
Yeah.
It is family
Friday night.
Bring
We got a
them to the
party.
park.
This is how this rolls.
Yeah.
It's Friday night. Let's get it down.
But we're also working on some different ideas. The women and youth thing is the only avenue for growth. Every dude who wants to mountain bike already has a mountain bike.
Yep.
The people that are going to represent growth, and this is a conversation I've been having even in a former life as a motorcycle journalist, the only place that any industry is growing right now is among women and youth. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to have more aggressive marketing. We're going to have more female-friendly things. We're going to whatever those things are, and I'm not good to speak to any of those things because I'm not a kid or a girl.
No one at this table is, but we need to ask those
Knowing is
people.
the
You're
first
absolutely right. Yep.
But bringing representatives for those people to the table
Bingo.
to have that conversation to engage all of your community and not just parts of it.
That is absolutely where CORA and I think the Cincinnati community of bikes and trail runners and everybody is. Yeah, there are plenty of people that just do these things that aren't identified and don't have things for them, and they need to be a voice at the table.
Like it goes back to what we were saying about Terrell Park is there's no advocate for the person that doesn't know they need an advocate. And like you're saying, the guys that are already in it, they're already dyed in the wool, and guys are very vocal. They have no problem expressing probably more often than they should how they feel about something. Whereas like in general, kids, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what being an advocate is. They don't know what.
Yeah.
They just, I like riding my bike, and I had a great time when I rode my bike in the woods. I'd love to go do that with my friends. That sounds awesome.
Cool. Can I race my friends?
Right. It's gonna happen anyway.
I raced my friends anyways when I was a kid, and we didn't have number plates. If you gave us number plates, we would have something to fight for.
Yeah.
Even more than we did.
Right. And I think women are probably more competitive than men by nature.
But
if you line them up, they'll race.
Their competition looks different than men. And this is a thing that I'm finding out by talking to our women racers and talking to my wife, who is a mountain biker, though she doesn't admit it, is that they look for something different out of that experience than men do. Men want to go out and grind and thump themselves off of trees and have this amazing experience. They come out half bloodied with a tacoed wheel and everything else. Women want to race and they want to be competitive, but they want to be competitive to different ends. And figuring out what that is and what a competitive environment that is also nurturing to whatever it is they want to take home is the huge challenge. So we're trying to crack that nut right now.
I think that transcends sexes completely. I mean, I raced the Tri-State 6 this past year, and while it was a great experience and I had a lot of fun, I'm not racing the Tri-State 6 this year because guess what? It just didn't nurture me as a person. and that's cool. Like, it wasn't the thing for
It's
me.
It's not a judgment against.
It's not
the
judgments
series.
against the series. Like, every time I'm riding along in the woods and friend of the show Eli Orth passes me, I'm like, "What's up, Eli? How's it going?" And he's like, "Hey, Doug." And I'm like, "Yep, that's Eli. Like, here's a guy who finished first in the NUE series in single speed, whatever. Insane monster of a human and a wonderful guy, but like that guy can ride a bike." And you know what? It was fun for me to see him pass me and go by me twice, but like, not a nurturing series for Doug. Doug figured out something different for him. But what it's about is providing opportunity for people to figure out what nurtures them. Because everyone's competitive level is different. Some people want to ride with their friends. Some people want to race their brains out.
Right.
Everything's different. You just have to bring all that to the table.
And it's like the 6 hours, John Bryan, the actual Tri-State 6 hour series, they're very, very similar to a half marathon, a full marathon. You have the front of the race that's borderline breaking the 2 hour barrier, which I don't even know how that's humanly possible.
It's not humanly possible.
And then you have people that say, I just want to finish. I want to be there. I want my pig medal. And you have the swath all the way in between. And if you provide an environment that's nurturing to all of those things, and every year when it comes around, my wife and I are out right behind our house cheering flying pig runners on. Doug, you do the same thing.
I'm drunk.
It builds, right now?
Well, no. I'm working on that. But I'm drunk at the top of my street cheering on flying pig at 7 a.m.
But you're there,
I've
and
seen
you don't consider yourself necessarily a runner, but you're there, and you're part of that community and building that community, because the race has involved almost the entire urban basin of Cincinnati, and it brings people together that otherwise wouldn't be runners.
Here's the power of community. So when I blew my ACL, my right knee, a bunch of years ago, and I had surgery. And when I was in physical therapy for that surgery, they said, you're going to run your 1.5 miles for your PT test for the Air Force every year, and that's all the running you're going to do. So I got a chip on my shoulder, and I said, I'm going to do a half marathon. So I did.
Good
and
for you.
Then I
Sounds
did
like
another
a nail.
one, and I was trying to get faster, and I wasn't getting faster. And so I was going to quit running because it hurts. It's not fun. Like, anybody who tells you they have fun running is a dirty, rotten liar.
Hi, Frank.
It's a very difficult thing on you physically and mentally to do. But I Googled running coaching in Dayton, and I found this team. And that team happened to be the Five Rivers running team, and they are the most amazing collection of individual runners, probably people, that I've ever been a part of. And that community saved running for me as a sport. I am not a natural runner. I have flat feet. I have one bad knee. I'm 190 pounds, and I'm 6 feet tall. I am not a natural runner. But here's where that power of community happened. They kept me so engaged and so excited and so enthused to be a part of that family that I ran a 135 at Monumental a couple of years ago.
Wait, a 135?
A 135, which is not any
that's
kind
a
of
half,
elite time.
right?
Yeah, that's a half.
That's still real fast.
So I have to...
It's a
do the math for
locomotive
me.
going a little
How
over.
fast a mile is that?
That was like 7:17 miles.
Barf-tastic. Last night on the treadmill, I felt good because I ran sub 10-minute 3 miles.
And that's where I started. And
Context.
that's,
Exactly.
It's happened for everybody that I know that has dropped into that community. My wife was not a runner when she started, and I nagged and begged and bribed her and everything else, and now she's on the team, and her times are dropping, and she's getting faster, and she's doing an awesome job. She's run, I think, she's going to kill me if I get this wrong. She's run, I think, 4 half marathons now and is working on Flying Pig again this year. That is what the power of a community does. It's not just that, hey, it's fun and we get to go do stuff. It makes you better. Like, it improves you tangibly as a physical organism when you are part of a community that's that good.
But the side effect of that is you're not just getting better by doing that thing. Mm-hmm. You're not getting better at the thing. Mm-hmm. You're getting better at making new friends. I didn't know Doug until you came back. I didn't know you until 2015. And now you and I are really good friends because bikes, because CORA, and because we share this commonality and kind of found each other through that. Grant, you and I are the exact same way. We became friends because of bikes. Mm-hmm. And it's not... I'm probably slower now than I was 2013 before I met these guys, but I feel much more fulfilled having these two, having you, Pete, having everybody else in my bike family, be part of my life because it's brought me so much more. It's brought me so many opportunities. It's enriched my life in so many different ways that you don't even feel as though you're volunteering or doing something.
Yeah.
You're just hanging out with your friends.
Yeah, I really love how like we took a turn tonight, like in our conversation towards what really matters in the long term, and I think what we drove at when we had our episode about why we do this. It is about building community, and I really appreciate you bringing that to the forefront because I think that's really what all this is about, right? All this is about the relationships, all this is about your experience, and all this is about having a life that is a positive thing in your life. Having the thing that you care about that is your passion, be it running or biking or hiking or bird watching or God knows what, underwater basket weaving, whatever it is, as long as it reflects back in your life and gives you, success and validation, it makes you feel like a normal human being. Like, that's what we all strive for. And for us, this is what we do. This is what makes us happy. And this is why we put all our effort into it, because it gives us something back. And, this is why groups like MVMBA and CORA and Queen City Bike and all of these organizations give back to their communities, because they want to give this same feeling to every single person that ever touches something they've done. And that is what we're all at a very, very base level are trying to do. And I'm really glad we got back to that tonight. It's an awesome way to be.
I think the way that whatever organization that you're running, the way that you know whether your community is successful is if every person who comes into it becomes greater than they were before in any respect, whether that's their physical performance, whether it just makes you a better person.
Right.
Whether it enriches your life in some way. If people come into your community and feel like they have to give to it, there's something you're missing. If people come in and feel like they are added to by joining your community, then you're doing it right.
That's awesome. I think that's the spot for me. And thank you, Pete. This has been awesome, dude.
It's been a ton of fun.
It's been awesome.
I'm honored to be here.
This will definitely be this is why this is the big bonus episode, because this one's going to be a long one, guys.
Yes.
I'm excited. This has been awesome.
And as always, every week, just remember, we are easy to reach. You can email us, thegravellot513@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram @thegravellot. Find us on Facebook, The Gravel Lot. Like, share, comment, do all the things.
We are located on the web at thegravellot.libsyn.com. Up-to-date trail information can be found at coramtb.org as always. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Dubminion, and John is at @theritual_US.
And as we say every week, decisions and trails are made by those who show up. So if we don't see you on the trails this week, we'll see you next time. Bye, Doug.
Bye, John.